kids are 8 and 11.
This
A
is,
little bit older because I read teenage.
you can do, all right, so, yes, I definitely see. All right, so, yes. Hi, Oliver, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing fantastic.
All right, I see a lot of people here already. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's a little bit earlier of a live, but we're so appreciative of you guys being here today. Wow, there's so many of you. Hi, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so today we're doing a little bit of a hybrid where we have some live parents and you guys all here. And thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about discipline and punishment today. Please head over to our website to get your packet. You're going to want to join in with us, and you're really going to want to get the worksheets that we're giving you guys so that you can work through some of the topics that we're going over today. But really apply them to your personal situation. And that's a lot of the fun that we have with these topics, bringing people on that we would love for you guys to be exposed to. Today we have Oliver Levy at Mindful Parenting Toolkit. Thank you so much, Oliver. I'm going to give you a few minutes to introduce yourself.
Cool. Oh, I'm on already?
Yes, go ahead. So you
Okay.
guys, so we're live on Create Kids EDU. We also are live with Oliver Levy at Mindful Parenting Toolkit. And you can find this packet on our website at createkidsedu.org. On the top it says programming, and you'll see Create Lives, and you'll get the full packet there and for a prior live that we've done. Okay?
Okay,
Go
cool.
ahead.
So I'm going to keep it brief because I'm going to follow your lead. So again, my name is Oliver Levy, a Mindful Parenting Toolkit. And basically, I have a three-step process when it comes to parenting. I've been doing this for over 9 years. I have a three-step process when it comes to parenting, and that is to communicate, connect, and correct. A lot of parents want to just correct, but we have to communicate and connect first. And, that's how I do my thing. And so just briefly short, there's lots more to it, but I just want to make sure we stay with the flow and we can kind of go back as we go along with your program this morning.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be tossing it to you for you to chime in. I love some of the topics that you have on your page. I think we have so many agreements for how to deal with things, and our content really overlaps. And so I was really excited to get you on here today. So let's just jump into the topic. So what is the difference between punishment and discipline? It is sometimes hard to get to the bottom of the difference, especially when we're frustrated by a child's behavior. So go ahead, Oliver, and then I'm going to jump in.
Sure. So I want to make this, the reason why this is so important, I want to make a big distinction because a lot of parents, they punish their children thinking that they're disciplining them. And it's not even close. So basically, let me keep it short. I like to keep things short and simple. So punishment is anything that causes a child to feel some sort of blame, shame, or pain, right? Does it work? Of course, punishment works. Here's the reason why punishment doesn't work for a long time, because it causes some sort of blame, shame, or pain. So the behavior never gets corrected. The child learns to be a liar at the end of the day. It's fear-based. The kids act out after a while. You have resentment and all these behavior issues when we're thinking that we are disciplining them. Now, discipline, on the other hand, it's basically, it's all about, it comes from the Latin word disciple, which is to train, teach, guide, mentor. So you see how there's a different ring to that. So instead of some sort of blame, shame, or pain, or child shuts down, or behavior never gets corrected, the reverse happens. The child is more respectful. They start understanding you. They're listening to you now. Now they feel like they have a place in the family, and the list goes on and on. So the reason why I'm glad that you start off with this first, because I usually start off with let parents understand the different mind shift in how we're approaching your kids. And parents may say, what does that look like? That looks like very distinctive based on the words we use and how we use them. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so important, and you really covered the main points. One of the things that I wanted to add is a topic that we covered yesterday, which is essentially how punishment affects the nervous system and how important that is for a child. So, and this is one of the topics that parents kind of gloss over, and why they have frustration for why they're getting the behavior back, and they're not putting together the body component to behavior. And essentially, when a child is really afraid, they're getting things like shame or the silent treatment, or obviously corporal punishment. So they're getting hit. All of these are going to start up the nervous system's safety mechanisms, and so they do not feel safe in themselves and in the situation, which is going to make the situation worse, because they're creating all of the behaviors that are necessary for them to try to protect their relationship. A child is always going to depend on a parent for their safety, for their basic needs. And so on a survival level, the nervous system cannot be calm, right? And so that's why you're going to lead with connection, just on a very fundamental level. You can't get the body calm enough for the brain to then be able to think on its normal level until you get all of the natural reactions that a parent's going to have because they're frustrated out of the way, right? And that's also why corporal punishment doesn't work like you think it does. And that's a great segment or segue to that question. I actually saw an amazing video on your page, Oliver, and you touched on what I saw in that video that I really loved, and that was Geber Mate talking about what discipline actually is and how it comes from the word disciple. And when you have a disciple, they listen to you because they love you and they love what you are teaching them. And that is an important part to why you follow somebody, why you would continuously do what they tell you to do without fighting or being forced to. And so he touched on this, and I loved that video on your page. Go ahead, I wanted you to comment on it because it's so important to the perspective of why a person would want to follow you.
And I'm going to touch on it from a different perspective. Probably most parents haven't really heard this perspective. And I want you to chime in on this because this is so key. So when it comes to punishment, I'll start learning to listen to you from punishment. There's something called, it goes into, and I love how you explain that about their flight or fight mode, but they go into adaptive mode. So there's 3 kinds of mode that children have, all of us, but let's just focus on children. You have tantrum, they're going through a tantrum. You have the curious child, and you have the adaptive child in their minds. Here is the dangerous thing when we implement punishment. They're always going to adapt and adapt and adapt to make sure they love you and please you. The difference, the dangerous thing in that is that now they become people pleasers. And after people pleasers, now they can't even have a mind of their own. They can't even start a business. They can't even, nothing is their own anymore because now they're always adaptive. And a lot of parents think that, you know what? When they get older, when they reach the teenager stage, they'll figure it out. They'll never figure it out. The reason why they can't figure it out, because they're always in adaptive mode. And that adaptive mode just get them stuck in a sense that there's nowhere to go. No, they don't have a voice for themselves. We're talking about having voices for themselves. No, they don't have a mindset for themselves. Now they start following. Now when they reach teenager stage, that's danger. Now to do drugs and alcohol, they don't even know. For them, that's not even a choice. They just kind of go along with whatever that's there. Peer pressure, it's easy to get into what's there. So the list goes on and on. So I just want to give that little bit of perspective when it comes to punishment from that perspective in terms of discipline.
So I have a great follow-up question for you. Now I'm going to put you in the hot seat because this one, it comes from a parent here that's live with us. And so how do you handle, we're going to give you an age, about 8, okay, right around there. when a child is angry with you and they have potty mouth right back to your discipline, right? So that they don't want to see you, they're going to leave, and they're done with your talking. How do you transition over? Because essentially, obviously, when a child is older, this is not these behaviors become worse with time, right? So how do you hold the boundary? And I'm going to answer this after you. How do you hold the boundary, but give the discipline?
I
right?
love that. I love that. So first and foremost, there's always a three-step process to my answers, to my approach, to anything that I do. And I'm not only me, but I'm encourage parents to think about this as well. So the three processes are communicate, connect, and then we can correct. So you asking me, how do I correct? Before I go to correct, I'm going to tell you my approach. First of all, when they start having a potty mouth like that, I start look internally. Now it's a parent, now it's me problem, where I'm going to say, you know what? They are communicating something to me. They are communicating something to me when they have a potty mouth. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Maybe we're going to touch on that in a bit. That's first and foremost. So now, because I know that, I'm going to have more of I'm going to control my emotions, because parents, when they feel disrespected, who will lose it? The most important thing is to control your emotions. You cannot control no one else, although we think we can, but you can control yourself and how you respond. We don't react, we respond. So once you take probably 10 deep breaths, 10 deep breaths, walk away, go in your room, chill, because there's nothing that a child can do that you can take 5, 10, 15 minutes to deal with it after, because it's important for you to come correct. If you're very heightened, you're not going to talk to that child in a respectful and calm manner. And my philosophy is, no matter what a child does, you should always approach that child with the utmost respect and in a calm manner, although I'm heated, right? So having said that, that's the two-step process. Now, how I would deal with that child after I've done that: one, I know that they're communicating to me. Number two, I am already calm. Now I'm going to have a conversation with them before I get into discipline. Here's the thing about discipline. The thing about discipline comes with consequences, which must be logical. And I know you're going to talk about it later on. I don't want to spoil the show for you, but logical. So anything I implement in that moment, the child must be aware of it prior to. They must be aware of it prior to, because it's not fair for them if they know, because I don't want to get too much deeper here, but I just want to keep it to the point, because I can go really deep into this. Because if the child doesn't know what's coming in terms of discipline, it's not fair, and they might even lash out even more. You might say, well, having that device is for a week, or whatever you might do, the child might just lose it, because they're like, oh, that's not fair. Now it's more of a battle than even a party mouth.
So, and then how do you move to correction? So you've corrected. So what would you tell that child, about talking back, or about delivering the consequence? How would you kind of segue that into the correction part? Because you did say you wanted to touch on that.
Yes. So, the correction part has to be authentic. So we don't jump right into and implement all sorts of different consequences. We don't do that. So when I talk to the child about, I use something called when then.
Oh,
so it's not a
I like that.
It's not a if then. If
That's a great tool.
Right. It's a threatening statement. So when you do this, then you do that. Here's the magic. Whatever the potty mouth cause, right? Whatever the potty mouth is, the pottying because of something that they don't like what you said. So when you're giving your instruction again, you use the when then. When you do this, then this, and then you walk away, you disengage. So you never talk about the potty mouth. That's irrelevant, because they know they're not supposed to have a potty mouth. They know they're not supposed to be talking back. The reason why they talk back anyways, are you ready for this? The reason why they talk back, because you've been talking back to them previously. Talking back from a parent perspective means you're answering. What do you mean you're not doing that? What are you talking about? Once you respond to a potty mouth, you're teaching them to talk back to you. So
That's so interesting. I love
yeah,
that.
so say nothing, you implement you when then, which I would have to go through a whole process of implementing, but I'm just giving you what I would do. You implement the when then, and then you close your mouth and you walk away, you disengage.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and answer this one too, and then if we can move forward to the next topic, because it's a great segue. But essentially, when a child is really angry, especially when they're younger ages, I think getting down to their level is important. Softening your voice and the way that you're communicating is important. We will be talking about that in a few minutes in some of our worksheets, but the nonverbal communication, which is your body language and how you're talking, tone, etc., are a lot of the things that make up your socialized behavior, which is basically what you learn is how you're supposed to respond back to people. And that's what you were talking about essentially how a child learns that from their parents. And we're going to use that as a segue for why teens might not listen, right? But to answer the question at an 8-year-old level, I think a lot of it comes to emotional development and the lack of regulation at that age and frustration. I thought when then was a great tool for that, because you're kind of cutting the emotional cycling and giving them a logical answer for why they can't do what they want at that moment. The only thing, and I did think it was in this next part is I think where I deviate from you a bit, but I did love your point. I think you do have to speak to the language and how they're communicating, and not enough that you become somebody who's nagging or giving them like a huge, spiel, right? You don't want to do that. But I think that explaining to a child that you can't understand them well when they're having a tantrum, or when they're too loud and they're making you feel like you can't listen to them, it is important for a child to understand that they need to watch how they speak in order for a person to be able to understand them well. And that's something that they're learning early on as well. So I think speaking to just how they're talking, their tone, or the words that they're using, you don't have to make it a huge where you're shaming them, but you can say something like, "Mommy can't hear you that well when you're speaking like that, when you're crying while you're talking. Why don't we go and calm down?" And you can do things like have a sit-in next to them or calm them down or calm down with them until you get the type of communication or the level of calm that would let you move into a correction. And that's what you were talking about, Oliver, where if you're correcting too early, first of all, the child isn't ready to understand, but there's nothing that you really can't correct 10, 15 minutes later. Really, there isn't.
So I just want to say, you didn't deviate at all. You didn't deviate from me at all. So the part that you chime in and say you'll speak to their language, that's the communication piece I'm talking about. That conversation should have been had way back when, before this started happening, before they part him out. So we're on the same page. We're on the same page.
Okay, I like it. So before we jump to the next one, which is teens, it's the same problem, but just older. I wanted to touch base on these 2 pages in the packet, which is where we gave examples for what healthy discipline is and what unhealthy forms of discipline are. And so it's so important because we do get these questions, right? Like, what is unhealthy and what should I be doing instead, right? So make it clear and give examples for us. So then we did that in the packet. So the 4 forms for each. And that is where you teach the child how to make better decisions in the future so that they can do that on their own. And essentially what is happening is they're missing a skill. They did not know something earlier, where you redirect them. And so instead of making it a huge, I'm going to critique everything that you're doing, you show them more appropriate behaviors or actions in the moment. And you can do that by saying things like, "Oh, well, when I was your age, I also made this mistake," or "Did you notice this? I didn't notice that." And so you're basically coming to your child's level of being compassionate about them not understanding, but just redirecting them on a particular thing they're not doing right so that they can find success faster. And that's called hand-over-hand learning. And when you're at younger ages, it's very important because they're being exposed to these things for the first time. The The last one is problem solving, where you're basically helping a child problem solve. You're not doing the problem solving for them. And that we kind of gave you an example of how you would do that with scripts. You can also see yesterday's post for more script examples. And then last one, natural consequences. Okay. And essentially there, what you're doing is just allowing the child to go through whatever the negative natural consequences are for that problem without stepping in. And of course you're doing this with the bumpers, just like you're, you know, in a bowling alley. You want to allow the child to have a level of natural consequence, and you can give that, or it can happen naturally where you're just not stepping in. And unhealthy. Okay, so these are the ones that cause problems long term, and they start to hurt the relationship between you and your child. Shaming, and shame is actually one of the strongest negative emotions that a person carries throughout life. And so when you're doing that, you're actually creating the people pleasing, like Oliver was talking about. Hitting, obviously, those create negative cycles of reaction-based behavior in your nervous system that takes so much for you to get rid of. And if you want to save your child so much long-term therapy, you are avoiding corporal punishment, okay? A silent treatment and ignoring it. So the silent treatment is another version of withdrawing a child's safety. Again, a child depends on their parent for their basic needs, and the silent treatment is the same idea as a baby bird falling out of a nest. They no longer have access to a parent, and that's what in their nervous system they're reacting to. And long term, again, this creates really horrible ways of relating to people, patterns that people need to work out of through a lot of stress. And then ignoring it. So ignoring a problem is how escapism is developed in a child. And so essentially when you give a child a toy as opposed to let him feel an emotion of sadness, for example. So a child's friend moves and he no longer has his close friend at school. Instead of saying to the child, I understand that you're sad, of course it's very sad, and sitting with them with the emotion, if you then take the child out to have fun and just they never learn the process of sitting with an emotion and processing it. And so escapism is what they learn, and the process that their body itself feels most comfortable in. You really don't want to do that for a child. Go ahead.
So if you have to say something 10 times, like you're closing the hamper.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there.
Yeah, I love this one. Okay.
What's the natural consequence? Like, I would just take away the
Yes, for sure. Okay, so we actually had this example yesterday where we talked about what do you do when a child doesn't want to turn off the PlayStation? Like, what do you do when they're not listening? So essentially, you're trying to empathetically hold the boundary. I'm gonna throw this to you right next because Oliver, I think you have a great point on this. But what's amazing way to solve this problem is to give them the warning 5 to 10 minutes before, and what that works whether you're at the playground and you need to leave and it's time for you to go home, or it's time for them to turn off the PlayStation and go to bed. And essentially what you want to do is give the 5 to 10 minute warning, and you want to be empathetic to the child. And so when it comes to the PlayStation, this is what it sounds like. Honey, you have 5 to 10 minutes left to play before we have to go to bed, but here's your warning. I don't want you to lose your save file or mess up your game, so here's your warning. I want to make sure that you're fine. So I'll be back in 5 minutes. If it's a problem, I'm going to help you turn it off then. And so you're empathetically holding the boundary. You're still going to turn it off in 10 minutes, but they got the warning that you care about their save file, their play, their, whatever session they're currently in, and that helps you avoid the craziness that might come after. So go ahead, Oliver, if you have an alternative or you want to chime in.
Sure. This is the reason why I love collaborating with parenting experts, because parents can get a true understanding of how to implement things. So that's amazing what you just said. What I would add to that, because Next week, you're going to have the same conversation. And you don't want to have the same conversation next week. You want to teach self-regulations. So what you do next, or what you do after that 5 minutes and everything is organized and the child is at a good space, so you catch them a good space, you want to talk about something called verbal agreement that leads towards logical consequences. And I keep saying logical consequences because maybe it's going to come back later on. So verbal agreement is, okay, so David, for example, you know, we've gone through this last week and I gave you 5 minutes and, you know, so we have this talk, communication, you have this talk in a nice, calm and respectful manner, you communicate with the child. So moving forward, I know you love your video game and all that stuff, and I'm always going to make sure you have time to play your video game. Moving forward, whenever you have an hour and a half or 45 minutes, and I know you want to finish your level, and you want to finish that stage, right? I'm always going to give you 1 or 2 minutes extra, but a cutoff point is a cutoff point. So moving forward, if that doesn't happen, if you're going to take 15 minutes because you get caught up, this is what we're going to do in the future. We're going to plug the video game out for 24 hours. The second time is going to be 48 hours. The third time is going to be a week. Verbal agreement, you say, we agree on that, and I always give my kids high five. Is that fair? And if they say no, put it back on them. What is fair? What do you think is fair? Talk to me. And no matter what they say, roll with what they say. Roll with, even if it's a goal against you, roll with what they say, because now you're empowering them. Now, the third time it happens, now they're going to have to say, no, they have to go with what you're saying.
I love that. I love that. I actually love that strategy, because the more power you give a child and where the actions they feel like are in, they chose, the more buy-in they have. And that's really what's going to help a parent get the behavior that they want in the moment. And I agree that it's something that needs to be done beforehand. It would never work if you're always catching a behavior as it's happening, right?
So that's a natural consequence that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it kind of puts into the position.
Yeah.
What happens if, like, the child is sometimes they get dressed for school, now we're running late for school.
Yeah.
We're not going to go to school.
So how do you deal with a child that's, there's a time basis. So it's time management issues. Actually, this is a great one. So let's say, you know, they're not getting their clothes on time. You really are stressed out. You got to get out of the door, or, you know, getting the homework done on time, right? So what, you know, how do you deal with a child that is maybe has executive function issues or time management issues, something like that, where you're kind of, it's not a one-time thing, it's a regular thing?
So again, same thing, 3 C's. Communicate, connect, and correct, right? So you want to go back to the night before. You want to go back to the weekend before the school day started. I'm assuming that, and I get this question a lot, I'm assuming that the child is taking a really long time to prepare for school. And sometimes it's tough because mom and dad have work to do. We got stuff to do. So we communicate with the child and let the child, there's many things we can do. So doesn't matter the age, as long as they're over 3, you can go to Target or Walmart and get a clock or watch and speak about timing. No, you can have routine chart. Kids love, and I would love to suggest the parents to have a clipboard and have a routine chart, minute by minute on the routine. When you wake up, what time to brush your teeth, what time to put on your stuff, what time to have breakfast. And children love to have those tick, tick, tick. And it doesn't matter.
Star chart.
Right. It doesn't matter, or star chart, whatever the case is. And it doesn't matter how many they get, they're participating because it's going to get more and more. So that buy-in, and you're talking about power, right? So a great way of getting power, and I love the fact that you said this, it's about the buy-in. So you give them power. First of all, you have the communication. You talk about when to wake up and how to wake up, and the fact that mom and dad as you know, their routine in the morning, and it's very important for them to be on time. They know this. Of course they do, because we had this conversation already. It's just that we have to be in a great place and not waiting for the morning. If you're waiting for the morning, you need to call work right away and say you're going to be late. Because if you start rushing that child because you are so busy, you want to get them going, this is the reason why the next day and the next day and next week is going to continue to be a struggle because they haven't bought in yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So this is actually a great segue to jump into one of the worksheets that we have for you guys today and why we want you to go and get the packet. So one of the worksheets is called From Consequences to Rewards. Okay, and on this worksheet, we help you move from an unwanted behavior down to the transitioning over to the replacement behavior that you want. And essentially what we did on this worksheet is you start with the unwanted behavior, you list 3 natural replacement behaviors that you would like to encourage instead, and then you go through, you write down 3 natural consequences to the unwanted behavior and 3 rewards. Okay, and so essentially I wanted to talk about a reward system because especially when you're trying to get a child out of an unwanted behavior, rewards in the moment, and this can be positive reinforcement. This could be a hug, this can be a high five, where you're really telling a child that you appreciate their behavior, or it could be something where you take them out for ice cream or something like that. It's up to you, and it will always be phased out once the behavior has been changed. But this worksheet will help you work through your child's actual what they're showing up, what you want to change, with the process that works well. And essentially, it's going to let you think about how to push a child towards a natural consequence that matches and helps them learn new skills for the future, and then also 3 rewards that would match the behavior in the child. So this worksheet is going to be a beautiful tool for you for this particular topic. And then the next one is a mindful moment. And this one is actually for a child. So this one is not for you. This would be for your child. And it helps the child think through their behavior, but from an outside perspective. So from what the parent is looking at them and feeling when they see them. And it's essentially a tool to grow empathy in a child, and also self-awareness, right? And so they're growing empathy for their parent, and they're growing self-awareness about how they come across. And essentially the first thing, and I love that you said this earlier, does the child even know that they did something wrong? And that's a great point, because a child is learning a lot of things for the first time. And so on the top, you'll see, did you break a rule? Yes, I don't know. And that's so important. So a child, first of all, is going to feel like you understand them and have compassion for them because they didn't know. And 2, it shows them that learning is not a bad thing. And so they have a growth mindset by making sure that you ask them and you have compassion for that part, not knowing. So essentially in this worksheet, they're going to understand how they behaved and how it comes across, if it was disrespectful, irresponsible, or unsafe. And you get to see from their perspective how they felt when they broke the rule and how they feel now about their actions. And then it walks them through really understanding what was important to them in the moment, so why they behave that way. And that is a process that is, in terms of self-awareness for a child, so important for them to learn, because there's adults out there that are walking around doing things that they don't really know why they're doing it, and it comes from this the lack of this learning this early, right? So the not having a connection from your emotions to the actions that come from them comes from never really making this connection in your brain. So we wanted to help kids do that. And then, of course, what can we do differently, and a quote or affirmation for this particular problem. And that, if a parent can help a child come up with some kind of mindset switch, something that helps, a tool that helps them switch from this particular behavior, it does help, right? So we do hope that you use a mindful moment for your child, and from rewards to consequences for you.
I don't want to remind me add to that piece, because I'm just looking at your worksheet over here as well, the one mindful moment. I want to really encourage parents that when they label their feelings, when you look at, oh, I felt when I broke the rule, and they circle it, that that's where the magic is, because that's also tapping into the emotional intelligence. They start understanding that it's okay to feel this way because, well, first they see mom and dad feel this way, and we should also label our feelings when we get mad. But when they start labeling their feelings, there's something about the frontal cortex that really triggers them to like, ooh, calm down a little bit. That's when they start understanding emotional intelligence. And this emotional intelligence, parents, don't let this go over your heads because, just like you said, right? A lot of parents and adults don't have this regulation. That's why sometimes we lose it as parents, right? We don't have this regulation. We all see it in the workplaces and stuff. So I just want to touch on that real quick. So just to let parents understand that this is the emotional intelligence 101 as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it has such a deep impact in how a person can interact with their own inner world, right? So I feel like this, and this is why I feel like this, or this behavior or this experience made me feel this way. And so that's going to stop things like emotional eating and escapism and addictions, right? Addictions are emotional-based ways of trying to cope with something that's stressful. The little abilities to do this, right, on a worksheet and do this early is the way that a child kind of defends themselves, or a parent can protect a child against that long term. So while we're here with the worksheets, let's just go over the last two. The last two are for parents, and it's about communicating better, and this is a great segue. So a lot of the time, the reason why a child is going to react badly to our punishment or to our discipline is because they're perceiving or interpreting our behavior or the way that we communicate negatively. So how a nervous system interprets the way that we're speaking is important because it's essentially working against you. A child is going to have a tantrum for longer, speak badly for longer, or just not listen, and you're not going to recognize the freeze states or the fight states where the nervous system is in, and you're going to misinterpret why he's completely blanked out or why he might be pushing or being aggressive against you when you were trying to give him discipline, right? So go ahead.
So this later might go where, like, for years now, I react. Like, no, don't react.
Yeah.
Just give space, because my daughter needs space. She's not that sit inside. She needs to go and cool down, and then she regrets it.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Like, how long do I keep with the same approach? Because it seems like never ending.
Ah, interesting. So
clearly, she's not learning. I buy her tools, I buy her fidgets, and when she gets into that red zone, she just gets into that red zone and it climbs very fast.
So how do you get a child to disconnect from a very strong emotional tantrum, right? So essentially when your calming tools are working a little bit less, right? So the fidget toys are not working so well and things like that. How do you, what do you help a child do when the breathing isn't working as well?
First of all, that's a great question, and it's going to take some process. So it's the same process, the 3 C's, right? And now and I know you know this because this is really, really important in the parenting industry, that we must connect before we can correct. So that means because if they can't disconnect and they can't regulate their emotions, they don't feel like they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel like they're part of the family. They don't feel like they're part of society. They don't feel like they're part of the group. They don't feel this way. So the question is, how you make them feel this way is to connect with them. And a great tip, and I hope the person is listening and writing this down, is we must spend quality time with them. Not just regular time, quality time in terms of, what your child wants or likes. So you get down to their level and do what they need to do. Put this time aside. This is a special time you're going to spend with your child. Put it aside. Treat it as if it's a major surgery to a doctor's appointment or something like that. It's a must. And this must be, try to do it 7 days consistently, 5 to 7 minutes per day. And brainstorm with them what would they would like to do, because not everything, not because they want to do play with blocks on a Monday, they want to play with blocks on a Tuesday. They might want to play with cars. They might go want to run around in the driveways on a Wednesday. Figure out what they would like to do each day or each moment of the day. If you stay home mom or dad, right? Figure out what their special activity, what they're interested in each day, and you put that time aside. They might not understand time, which is fine. You're also going to teach them about time and let them know, okay, mom and dad has this to do, and after this, I'll do this. And then you engage with them. Once you're engaging with them, you're in their world. You are in their world. They're bossing you around. If they get mad, you're not wearing your painting hat. Be another child and pretend like you get mad as well. You're a 2-year-old, you're a 3-year-old. You're getting down to their level. That's how you connect with them and help them figure it out. You know what triggers the child to get mad. Pretend like you're another child of that age and try to act in a way that, okay, what's happening? And, you know, that's fine, that's cool. And, you know, why you get mad? You get down in there with them and connect with them. Then after that, then they start looking at you differently. They start engaging with you differently. Now that emotions, connecting from all the emotions, there's those steps. But most importantly, 2 things. Must be consistent and patient with them.
Awesome. I just wanted to, that's so great, and it really is the difference maker. I wanted to add, because, you know, here at Create, our thing is body awareness and how emotions show up in the body and how we can regulate or teach kids body skills so that they make better choices in the moment. So we wanted to add, or I wanted to add that perspective. So when a child is, certain coping methods are not working for a child. So breathing is not working, time-ins are not working. It really benefits you to look at how a child's nervous system is showing up. So if they're showing up in freeze states, your coping methods should match getting a child out of a freeze state. If they're showing up in a fight state, same thing. And so what is this going to show up as? Physical activity most of the time, all right? And so a great tool is, you know, if a child is showing up with a fight state type of reaction, so they're getting aggressive and they're hitting and things like that. The ability to throw a ball, play outside, where you're pushing them to do a physical activity that matches the nervous system reaction, you're going to have a much easier time to try to dissipate that. So what do you think about that? So have you tried, so if she's being aggressive, you're doing a physical activity with her. Or if she is shutting down, you're doing something calming. Like, for example,
like if you're in the car,
yeah,
like, I'm hungry, and then she goes to like bread because she's hungry. She can't. That's not her.
well,
She can't.
yeah, for sure. So
She's kicking and screaming in the car, and I can't. I don't have a ball. I'm not going to stop the car.
absolutely, absolutely. So some of these are going to be difficult because they're how a child reacts in the moment, and some of these are tantrums and developmental based, right? Yeah, absolutely. So in some of these situations where you can't really help a child with a coping behavior in the moment, again, this is what Oliver was saying, where you're prepping these beforehand, so that you have tools available for in the moment, because that's going to be hard for you. You know, like you said, you're driving. How can you help a child that's in a back seat, right? I think beforehand and communicating beforehand is important, and having tools beforehand is important for that. But also communicating, understanding that she doesn't feel good. So one of the tools that we saw recently for this is actually, so let's say, for example, a child is complaining that they want a chocolate chip cookie, and they really want it, and they're freaking out because they can't have it. You don't have a chocolate chip cookie to give them, okay? So a great way to solve this problem is to also share in wanting a chocolate chip cookie as much as they want it. So you can share how frustrated you are that you want a chocolate chip cookie. You really want one, and you can ask the child if they have one. And what that helps the child do is understand, one, there's sometimes problems that you can't solve, and you know, you have to deal with the disappointment. They can sit with that disappointment, but also you're on the same team, right?
Right.
You're solving the problem by kind of overwhelming the emotion, but through being on the same team. And I think that's a great solution to not having like a in the moment coping method for a child. Yeah, I'm happy that would help. So I think communication, that's a great segue for that. Communication really is important for how a child reacts, right? If your body language is not communicating safety, your child is going to react to that. And one of the worksheets that we have today for you guys is, what does my body language say? Because sometimes we're communicating something differently in our body than what we're saying. And this worksheet is going to help you see from the child's perspective something about your body language. And it's also going to help you trace it back to when you saw that body language, because your socialized behavior is learned. And so you learned that body language, that posture, that way of reacting, and unpacking that, tracing it to see where it came from is a huge first step to making sure that it's no longer an automatic behavior. So this worksheet will help you for sure see the behavior from an outside perspective. So from how your child, or even, you know, maybe your work colleague also witnesses your nonverbal communication in this way, right? So from an outside perspective, what you look like and what you're communicating, but also why you're doing that. All right, so this worksheet will help you do that. And then say this, not that. So we do scripts all the time, and scripts help you learn better ways of communicating, especially when you're angry. So these are essentially the top things that parents say when they're angry. What were you thinking? Stop that, you're impossible. And then it gives you an alternative. And these are just how you can start communicating better, because you're going to see that you learn the format. And you can do this in the moment with whatever it is that you have to tell your child, as long as you kind of know what it is that you should be trying to say and what you should not, or what kind of emotions you should be trying to elicit and which ones not. So what do you think about body language, especially like with older kids, so teens? How important is this, and how you communicate as kids get older?
It's huge, because body language, just so you're saying, I was just taking notes while you're writing as well, while you're talking as well, because I want to just hit these points. Socialized body language, socialized behavior, it's coupled with your body language and words. So I have a whole module, those 45 minutes just talking about words, and you're talking about scripts. We have to have scripts and words, because scripts and words coupled with our body language, that's magic. So, and I was just looking at some of you say this instead of saying that, right? And when we point the fingers and we say no, that is so confusing. We know what we're trying to say because it's us, but it's so confusing to a child. And when the child is doing something that we don't like, we get irritated. So it's always a direct mirror. So when it comes to a teenager, and this is something what I'm about to say is going to be very tough for parents to hear, you're not necessarily a parent anymore. Because I want parents to take off that parenting hat. Parenting, someone said to me, what's the difference? Because just so the audience know that 2019, June 17, I retired as a parent. I'm a mentor, right? And when I broke the news to my kids, they got it right away. And I was a little bit shocked that they got it right away. Because I thought I would have to go through something that I call a teachable moment for them to understand, right? But they got it right away. And the reason why, and there's no difference. The difference is you're not really in the controlling state anymore. So when it comes to a teenager, the moment we're ordering direct and correct, it's nagging to them. We have to really get them to speak, communicate. We have to watch and be intentional with our body language on the words we're saying, like really the words we're saying, because words are very powerful. And I know this is your cup of tea, this is your thing, and it comes to words. So teenager, we really have to pull back a lot of layers and understand them, obviously, and we have to continue to act as a mentor to them. We have to guide and teach them, telling them, ordering them, reminding them. Obviously, if you don't remind them, they're not doing it. Obviously, if you don't tell them, they're not doing it. But my point I'm saying is the difference is when you're a mentor, you're inspiring them to do the things that they need to do without telling them. And that's the difference. And you use words to do that.
I mean, it goes right back to, you know, discipline means disciple and to follow. And if you want somebody to follow and what behaviors you want them to follow, it really is dictated by the communication that you have. Like we see all the time, kids copy parents, whether it's word for word things that they say or it's their mannerisms. You know, kids copy exactly. And so yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so if your child is, you know, and we've covered this before. So if you point your finger and you say no, and you speak to a child and they look and you tell them to do something and they look you in the face and they say no, that very often is a copied behavior. It's something they're doing right back to you. And so for sure, especially when a person is old, when a child is older and a child is getting into their teenage years developmentally, it's their job to push away from a family to learn in the world, and they're going to do this biologically, whether you want to or not. And so you need to be the connecting safety valve for them, because the outside world is what toughens them up and what actually, that's where they create their pains and their experiences, whether it's their friend leaving or somebody who didn't want to talk to them today or a friend who doesn't want to play with them. Those are the moments where their emotional regulation is being tested. And if you're adding to that, you're creating issues within your relationship, right? So why don't we kind of round this out with talking about why it's so important to get kids into sports early on. And I thought this was a great segue for this topic, right? So I thought that sports and teaching a kid discipline was hand in hand, and long term, short term, it has amazing developmental benefits, but long term as well. And one of the things I found, and one of the reasons why I loved coming to talk to you today is because you are a coach of girls basketball team, and we have a basketball program for emotional regulation. So another point of commonality there. But sports is something that helps a child work through emotional frustration and develop regulation, also develop communication, working with other kids, and so many different opportunities to work through a lot of these issues that you are going to then have to discipline. And they do it with fun. They do it through a fun avenue. And so I wanted to give Oliver a few minutes to talk about how important sports can be for a child. I know music is important and all of these other extracurriculars are important, but why are sports different?
First of all, I'm probably going to need more than a minute because
Yeah, go ahead.
it's the right thing, but I'm going to keep it short. Sports is amazing. Hold on, let me just plug this in. Sports is exactly like life. Sports is exactly like life. There's no difference. And I say this all the time. And I know there's a lot of kids following my page, and I'm going to say this loud, and I hope they don't take it personally. But I've been in sports for 30-something years, always coaching. It could be basketball, it could be soccer, it could be, I did football, tackle football, whatever, the hockey, whatever the case is. And what I'm about to say is that me personally, I really, some of the kids know, I don't really get into them winning or losing. I actually don't really care about the actual sport itself. I use the sport itself because they have a vetted interest. They love the sport. So now they love life. Right? I want us to make that connection, parallel connection with life, right? I get you to love life because you love the sport. And sport in itself that teach you things that is very, very difficult to be taught unless you're mindful, unless you're intentional at home. Like obviously, other than physical development and cognitive development and the social development, and you go into emotional development and character and health and fun, right? Other than that, when it comes to disappointments, we as parents teach that a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I hope all, like parenting is part of mental health. And I hope we understand that as well, especially nowadays. When it comes to the sports itself, the disappointment is so harsh and it's so real that you have nowhere around it. So if you're going to be disappointed that, you know, your iPad broke, your mom and dad is going to be like, okay, I'll buy you a new iPad.
Yeah.
So no, you're not really learning from that disappointment. Now, when you lose a championship game or a game that you really wanted to win or you're supposed to win, you can't go back and say, let's replay that game.
I love that.
You have to cry, and I watch my girls cry all the time. And I'm like, yes, they're crying. And parents are like, what are you doing? I say, yes, they're crying. This magic start happening while they're crying. I sound evil, right? There's a magic happening while they're crying. They are learning. There's a lot of self-talk is being happening while they're crying, right? So I'm gonna let you touch on it. You can ask a little bit more. I want to kind of leave it there to allow parents to understand. And I always tell parents this, and I think I made a quote, but I haven't put it out yet. And I'm gonna summarize the quote that that I think parents should put their kids in sports as young as 2-year-old. It's going to be easier for them to understand life than for us, because we as parents, we come with a lot of emotions because we're emotionally connected with them. We want to, I'm going to leave this right here. We tend to protect them from the world. We should be preparing them for the world. So the sports itself is preparing them. We are protecting them. We know we can't protect them for too long, right? So the real world is right. So I just want to leave it like right there, or you can ask more question. But that sports for me, that's my thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved actually that. I think is one of the most important parts. I think your point was spot on. Disappointment is the hardest emotion to deal with as an adult. And that's where, that's where you start acting out on your frustration, or when you start speaking words that you then regret later. And so it's the practice that a child can get that is outside of the hands of a parent. And just like you said, not controllable, right? You don't have all of the factors there in your control. I love that. I think that's one of the most important things that I've heard today, right? Because yes, in sports, you're going to be able to talk to kids, work with kids, learn what it is to communicate on a team. But it's those negative emotions and practice with them that makes us stronger people throughout life. And so I really value that.
I'm going to tell you important, our very interesting rule we have on our team. One of the rule is if the child is always seeking validation, if they're always looking to the parent in the stands, and the parent is looking back, the moment that starts happening, they're sitting on the bench.
Wow. Yeah. And why?
Because we want to take away that external validation. They have a voice. We allow them to make mistakes. We encourage them to make mistakes. Beautiful. Because mistakes them to play calm, and they're going to make less mistakes when we encourage them to make more mistakes. You understand the shift? When we
love it.
Mistakes is allowed and it's okay, right? What's not allowed is your effort, because you can control that. What's not allowed, you constantly looking to mom and dad in the stands only for validation. They know you can play well. They know that you're a superstar. You don't need to, when you make a mistake, they know that they want to encourage you. You need to have self-talk, and we always give them ways to self-talk, to walk through those mistakes and stuff like that. So that's the reason why. And obviously, at first, it was very tough for parents. The kids are always fine with it. was tough for parents, but once
Uh,
once they
we're-
buy it, yeah.
We're going to be cut off in just 10 seconds, so I just want to make sure that you guys thank you so much